The purpose of this tutorial is to demonstrate the entry of multi-point glucose calibrations during acquisition using Ponemah 6.1. We will perform a multi-point calibration on two animal subjects. The first implanted animal is a normal, healthy rat, and the second is a diabetic rat. We will begin with a fully configured glucose experiment already up and running in Ponemah 6.1. To set up the graph pages, click on Setup, Experimental Setup, then select the Graph Setup option. There are already several configured graph pages, so we will select the first unused tab and configure a graph page for a glucose calibration entry. Click the checkbox to enable the graph page and enter a label for the name of the graph page. Next, enter a value in the time text box to set the number of seconds for the length of the x-axis in the graph page. Next, click the checkbox to configure the first data line. In the subject column, select an animal ID from the drop-down menu of configured subjects. For the input column, select 1-gluco for the glucose parameter. For the presentation column, we will select the symbol for nanoamps. The label column we will leave alone, and we will type in nanoamps in the unit field. For the low and high graph coordinates, we will type in 0 for the low and 6 nanoamps for the high value. Click Apply to open the graph page for animal number 250. Enable a new graph page and repeat the process for animal subject 254. To assist in keeping track of critical timings of the calibration events, we will position a computer clock prominently on the screen such that the hour, minutes, and seconds are clearly visible. The multi-point calibration procedure is most simply performed by collecting two reference points during a glucose tolerance test. The following animation explains the process. An initial glucose reading is taken while the subject is at a baseline level. Then, the subject is administered a bolus of glucose. It takes about 15 minutes for the glucose level to peak. Take note of the peak time, wait 3 to 5 minutes, and obtain an additional blood glucose reading at the elevated glucose level. We have a stable baseline glucose reading for both subjects, and we are ready to sample the subject's blood and administer the glucose challenge. To begin the calibration process, open the glucose calibration window by clicking on the last icon in the graph page toolbar. In the glucose calibration window, select the animal ID for our first subject from the drop-down menu, then select calibration type. In this example, we will select multi. Once everything is set up to enter readings, obtain a blood sample and test it with the glucometer, then press Update Time Now. When the glucometer readings are available, enter them into the software and press Add Calibration. If possible, this operation should be completed within 10 seconds. The glucose challenge can now be administered once the blood sampling is completed. Repeat the collection of baseline values and dosing for the remaining animals while also observing previously dosed animals for peak glucose levels. We have compressed the time it takes for animal 1 to reach peak blood glucose levels. Once a glucose peak is detected, note the time and wait an additional 3 minutes. Then, take the second set of blood glucose values with the glucometer. Again, select the subject name, update the timestamp, key in the blood glucose values from the glucometer, and click the Add Calibration button. After the glucose peak for the second animal is reached and you've waited an additional 3 minutes, the blood glucose levels for that animal can be measured, entered, and added. This completes the multi-point calibration procedure for these 2 subjects. A separate graph page can be set up for each subject, as in this example, or separate subjects can be plotted on the same graph page. Either way, the graph pages must be configured before you begin and should not be changed once the calibration protocol has begun.